start video 3 of lesson 1. In this video, I'm going to show you something that you've probably seen before, which is the order of operations. But I'm going to show you a possible different way of thinking about it from what you've done in the past. Probably what you learned in elementary school and even middle school is something we refer to as PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? Where P stands for your parentheses, and then you got your exponent, your multiplication and division, and your addition and subtraction. And if you are comfortable with that and it has worked for you in the past, then you can stick with that, and that is perfectly fine. I want to show you a different way to think about it that I think works a little bit better for some people, and that is this idea of gems. We know it's important to have a defined order of operations because in math, you're always going to get the same answer. You want everybody in the room to be able to come to the same conclusion given a certain problem. But if we just leave it up to everybody's whims, then everybody's going to approach it a slightly different way, and we're going to end up with different answers. The order of operations shows us a specific way to go through it so that we can guarantee we'll all get the same answer. What GEMS does is it takes this parentheses, and instead of parentheses, we say grouping. The reason I like saying grouping instead of parentheses is parentheses isn't the only way that we show grouping in mathematics. You can sometimes see parentheses. You can sometimes see brackets. Depending on what kind of problem it is, you might see curly braces. Pretend I know how to draw those. I really don't. Radicals, if you had a square root in a problem and there was something happening under it, like you had a 3 minus 2, you would need to do that subtraction before taking the square root. That makes this a grouping symbol. Same thing with fractions. If you have something happening in the numerator, you would need to add those before you do that division. So sometimes fraction bars can serve as grouping symbols if they're separating a problem on the top from a problem on the bottom. So any of those serves as grouping symbols, not just parentheses. So let's go ahead and go through this problem and see if we see any grouping symbols. Well, we've got parentheses. So 3 minus 5 is negative 2. With order of operations problems, you are going to leave everything else exactly the same. You do one step at a time. We take care of those grouping symbols, and now we're going to move down to the next thing. The next thing in our PEMDAS is exponents. Well, the E here stands for the exact same thing. There's nothing fancy about that. If you've got something squared or something to the third power, to the fourth power, anything like that, you'll want to deal with that before moving on. So we do have an exponent here, so I'm going to say negative 2 squared. Negative 2 squared is 4 because that means negative 2 times negative 2. This tells me that I'm multiplying it twice. And negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. There's no other exponents, so everything else is going to stay the same. All right, now this M stands for multiply and divide. Just like in PEMDAS, multiplication and division happen at the same time. You just go through the problem, from left to right, and you do all the multiplication and division you see as you come to it. So for this one, I have 4 plus 20 over 2. That fraction bar here isn't serving as a grouping symbol because there's nothing, you've just got a 20 on top and you've just got a 2 on the bottom, but it is serving as division. So 20 divided by 2 is 10, and then I have minus 3 times 3, which is 9. All right, and then our last thing, if we're using PEMDAS, is addition and subtraction. Here I have an S, and that S is going to stand for subtract or add. Subtract and add. I like the fact that we use an S here instead of the A because that reminds you that you don't have to do all the addition first and then all the subtraction. You do addition and subtraction in a row at the same time as you come to it going from left to right. So I'm going to start at the beginning of my problem and go across. 4 plus 10 is 14, and 14 minus 9 then becomes 5. So my final answer is 5. And now you guys are ready to go on and do some U-tries. Check your answers when you're finished, and I'll see you back in a minute.